If I had to say another transferable skill is understanding your business. All of our recruiters and sourcers have been in a dialysis clinic and sat and met and spoken with the clinical managers, the RNs, the PCTs, to really understand what they go through. Ours is more of a service than a product. I mean, yes, we have dialysis machines, things like that. Are they experts in that? No, but they understand what the dialysis machine does. The first experience I got with that was back in the early 90s. I got in the car, I worked for the Dallas Central Appraisal District. It's the folks that deal with the property taxes and they assess your property. So they have auditors that go out, will visually inspect your property, see if there are additions, things like that, because they'll look at different construction reads. And so I went out in all three business lines, understanding the business. I just read an article about a CHRO who I think she's fairly new to the business, but basically she had to work all shifts and she had to work all stations. If you're not doing the day to day, I mean, obviously we're not trained to do dialysis. That's not us. But if we understand the process, we can explain the position.
Hi there, I'm Denise Chaffin, and I am your podcast host for Talking TA. And today I have with me Michael Goldberg, who is responsible for talent acquisition operations for U.S. Renal Care. And Michael is in Texas. And so thank you so much, Michael, for joining me this morning for our podcast. I look forward to a great conversation with you. So before we dive in, do me a favor, introduce yourself a little more, give us a little bit more about your background and what you do for U.S. Renal Care.
Sure. So, hello everyone, and also Denise, thank you for having me on the podcast. I enjoyed our quick hit conversation at a conference a couple of years ago. So, looking forward to going and diving deeper. Michael Goldberg, originally from Charleston, South Carolina, lived in Dallas, Texas, though, for 35 years. So, technically, I'm from Texas now, adopted son. And I've been in talent acquisition now, focused on talent acquisition since 2001, but have done talent acquisition my entire 28-year, 30-year career. It's probably more than 30, to be honest. I've been doing it a while. Over the years, I've done the HR track, but really decided that I enjoyed the hiring side of people and have managed teams from like, 2 to 3 people up to 20 people. Uh, Over the last, I'd say, let's call it 8 years, have been focused in on the healthcare space, and I have been at US Renal Care technically since February 2022, and but was hired full-time back in August of 22, so 3.5 years, and really enjoying it. I started off as a director, then was promoted to senior director, doing more frontline recruiting. But when I was hired as a contractor, I was doing more talent acquisition operations, right? So I told my boss that was my goal. And if you don't ask for something or let people know what you want, you might not ever get it. So one day out of the blue in I think it was January or February of this year, she came to me and she said, "Hey, want to live your dream job?" And I go, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "Well, I want you to do TA operations. I want you to be in charge of sourcing, which I've been in charge of since I've started. But I also want you to be in charge of employer brand. Project management is probably the biggest responsibility, budgeting, vendor relations, and anything that needs to get done behind the scenes." So we're getting ready to do some implementations of a couple of software for sourcing and then also for better improved application and candidate experience. So just an array of things that I get to do that I love every day because while I enjoy the front of the house operation and serving the main stakeholders, being behind the scenes just gives you a different perspective And also I can focus on the metrics. And I think that's when you look at project management, it's around managing the metrics. It's around managing the key performance indicators that we put on our recruiters and sourcers in terms of expectations to perform.
Well, and you were talking about working with vendors and incorporating some new sourcing tools into your platform. Let's talk about that for a second because I hear that sourcing might be going away with respect to people and that there will be more implementation of sourcing tools. So, how does that then align with your current talent acquisition team? I mean, what will they be doing as they move forward? Because hopefully, like you said, you had your dream job. Maybe for them, there are other dream jobs inside of US Renal Care that these people can look forward to.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that. I mean, that's something we're actually talking to our team about at our next TA team meeting. It's actually at the end of this week. Is if you want to be, whether you're a sourcer or recruiter, and you want opportunities maybe in other HR areas or other parts of the organization, say in operations or clinical research, or if you have the background, obviously. But we are starting to really, really focus on that, which is to give our employees that opportunity to grow. Now, you bring up a good point. Yes. Is sourcing fading away? It is, but not at US Renal Care because we've been able to come and improve ourselves by hiring. Last year, we did 63 hires, which the year before we had, when we just, or the 2 years prior, we had done eight, right? And so we really almost 10x'd it. And so this year, it's been a little of a softer market. It's been harder to get people to respond because I really think in the healthcare industry, these nurses and these patient care techs and LVNs, LPNs, they get hit up all the time, whether it's on Indeed or whether it's on LinkedIn or whether it's on ZipRecruiter or your favorite website. They get a lot of phone calls. So they're getting it from everybody, right? Because there's such high demand. But from a sourcing standpoint, we are asking our recruiters to do more sourcing. We've given them some additional tools, which I'll stay away from vendor names because the company probably would prefer it that way. But we basically want our recruiters and sourcers working together because we go in as a team. We don't go in, here's your recruiter and here's your sourcer. This is your recruiting resources, right? You've got a team of people that are willing to help you find the best, most qualified candidate out there. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time. Sometimes, depending upon the size, it takes a long, long time. I'll go at a ranger, but it does. It can in the rural areas. It's extremely competitive, right? And so it's about selling not just the opportunity, but what exists for those nurses and techs and LVNs, LPNs to advance at our organization. And we're putting some pretty cool things in place that I'm excited about internally. But sourcing is still very important to us.
Well, that's good. That's good. I'm glad to hear that because I mean, there's so many people that are panicking over this conversation, right? So let's talk about milestones for TA. Let's transition into that because I think that's another question that people have. What are our next milestones for talent acquisition? Especially you're talking about the adoption of some new tools and whatnot. And you have attended several conferences over the last few years, as a lot of us have. And so let's talk about that from your perspective.
So I could say AI. Right. I mean, look, AI is not taking our jobs. All right. They'll take some of those jobs, but you still need the human element of recruiting. Look, I got my start in my career with Marriott back in the day, back when you had things called TQM, Total Quality Management. I was a founding member of what is now the Bonvoy program. So I was on the committee that helped put the initial Bonvoy, what is now Bonvoy. I didn't put Bonvoy together, but it was the preferred guest program. and we built all these notes into the guest's profile. They didn't really earn points. We just started to get to know them a little bit better. And isn't that what recruiting's all about? I mean, honestly, when you think about it, it's getting to know another person and seeing if they fit into the puzzle, if you will, the human puzzle, human capital puzzle of the workplace at a specific company. And so to me, things that I see for the future after I've been playing around with my magic 8 ball, not the crystal ball, but the magic 8 ball, is that we as a function still have a long way to go. And even some of the core basic responsibilities that we do every day. So you may get some type of AI recruiter or AI bot to do something for you. But in the end, it's still the human element, touch, conversation that has to take place in order for us to identify candidates. I also think the other thing that is on the forefront is helping leaders, hiring managers, whatever you want to call it, understand why it's important to not hire to put a button seat, but to hire with purpose and intent to make sure we're bringing on the best people, right? So I see a knowledge gap that organizations, mainly the small to medium sized organizations, need help in to not do hiring manager training because that's outdated. Look, you can go, it's not outdated, but you can go to so many different resources. But I think what's more valuable is to teach the essence of understanding why it's important to take our time, how their decision making impacts their organization. The biggest gap, I would say, is decision making. There's faulty decisions being made all the time.
That's a very interesting point. Somebody brought up to me recently that w- decision making, of course, it wasn't really described that way, is lacking. One example that was given to me is when somebody leaves an organization and you want to backfill their position, are you just backfilling the position as it was? Or are you literally looking at that position and what the person who was in it was doing that they didn't need to do, that those tasks were redundant? What is it that you're going to want them to do moving forward? How are you going to change that position? Does it change the title? You've got the budget to backfill that role, but what is that role going to look like moving forward? Typically, it's not going to look like the same role that the person who was in it that had left was doing, right? So, how what decisions are going to be made? What decisions are going to be made around replacing that person to where the role is effective moving forward?
I agree with you. I think it's in some of your more routine based jobs. Let's use RNs. It's easy, right? They've been trained to do things a certain way, but the one thing you can't train on is patient care. And I don't know if someone that's been through, let's use dialysis before or walked into a clinic, it's it's sad. And you want these people to feel better. So you want to hire people that are going to take care of the patient and make them not feel special, meaning out of place special because they can either do dialysis at home or they need to come into the clinic for 4 hours and go through the dialysis cleaning process.
But either way, they need good patient care. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, right, bedside manner,
Mhm.
as we call it in the hospital systems. Does the doctor have a good bedside manner? Well, heck, I think the nurses and the techs and the other folks that are supporting that physician need to have those patient care skills too.
Kinda like that movie Patch Adams with Robin Williams. Do you remember that?
Yeah, fantastic movie because it add a little humor to the workplace. Maybe not to a situation that you can't get out of, right? It makes all the world a difference. So what I don't know if every doctor is now gonna go buy a clown nose, but, we'll see.
Or bring pets. I've seen hospitals that
Yeah, therapy dogs are a big thing now. Yeah. But you're absolutely spot on, Denise. You have to be able to,
make decisions for every job, right? For every position.
make decisions to bring on, do I want the same person or do I want something better? And if that person was missing a particular skill set and it's needed on the team, because you still have to consider your team dynamics, right? Then you should be looking for that skill that maybe that person had that the other people in the clinic don't have. The other thing people don't realize is that when you don't treat people right and people leave, they leave with knowledge capital walking out the door. And they go to your competitor and they tell them exactly what's going on.
Oh, true. True.
Yeah. And so you have to be, so to me, retention, people will argue this point, but I believe that retention is partially on the recruiters. A lot of people don't feel that way. They go, well, I didn't push people out or do this or do that with the new hire. No, you didn't, but you brought them to the table. Did you ask the right questions? Was there anything that was said that said, wait a minute, let me think about that?
Maybe we need to hire psychology majors for recruiting roles. I always said that I needed to hire English majors when we first started doing email years ago. So I need
Isn't that what ChatGPT is for now?
yeah, that's
So
true. Have we
there you
gotten
go.
past that point?
That's our English major. I sound so smart in emails now. It's amazing. My grammar is perfect, right?
So now we need psychology majors. People who can
You're
ask the right
right.
questions, right?
No, I was a psych major. It helps. I think it does help.
Mhm. It does.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, and it's also interesting because we talk about transferable skills and some of the conversations I'm having with other guests and just people in the industry, transferable skills mean different things to different people. Are we transferring skills for TAMs in particular? Are we transferring skills from the current TA model to a more psychology based or behavioral based type of skill? Because the roles are going to be different. Our roles in TA are going to be more people leaning. So, what are those transferable skills that we need moving forward?
So I have this hot sports opinion that recruiters are lazy or can be lazy, and there's quite a few of them out there. They tend to take the shortcut way out of it, right? Ralph Waldo Emerson said, nothing was ever achieved without great enthusiasm. You have, I think that's how it goes. I think that if you don't go into your job and you do it because, oh, recruiting's easy, recruiting is not easy. If you think recruiting is easy, please don't come to the party. It's not. It's hard. You're while you might be recognized, it's very much a sales job because people want to know now that you filled that role, what have you done for me lately? But I think the transferable skills that need to happen is really just giving a damn about the candidates, their experience, your hiring manager stakeholders, treating them with respect, communicating with them, being a human, right? We tend to hide behind everything. And yes, technology has made us this way, right? You've got great tools out there that are now starting to do everything for the recruiter, but yet the recruiter still needs to be accountable and for delivering candidates information, communicating when they say they're going to do it. My mantra is do what you say and say what you do. Otherwise, it's BS, right? And so, to me, the number one transferable skill is giving a damn. The second one is being able to personalize you as a brand representing your organization or yourself when you're, let's say, an agency recruiter, right? Those are the important skills. The other transferable skills will be AI. That will be required. You will need to be able to embrace AI for the purposes of making you more productive, getting rid of the admin time. And those are some of the tools that we're looking at because I think that's what recruiting has become. Look, there's some very well respected talent leaders and recruiters out there. Absolutely. Probably represents about 30%. So it's the 70-30 instead of the 80-20 rule.
Well, and to defend the people who are newer to our industry, and I wanna say maybe even going back to 2005, 2010 timeframe, there was a big shift in the industry when we started using job boards, and I think that's what made a lot of recruiters lazy. I mean, all of us thought, "Wow, this is great. We can just go and pull resumes and profiles," and so we did lose the edge our edge once we started using those tools. And now the tools are shifting us back to a place where we need our edge again, right? We need to, like you said, communicate effectively. I remember when I was working for a semiconductor company a long time ago, I was told that I was an ankle biter. And and so the guy I was working for said he was British, and he said, "Oh, I think that's because she came from a staffing agency world." He said, "I think those are the best recruiters because they have that sense of urgency. Otherwise, they don't get paid, right?" And so when you bring staffing recruiters into corporate America, yeah, we're all ankle biters. And one woman said, "No, Denise isn't an ankle biter; she's a pit bull." And I said, "I'm wearing that as a badge of honor. It means it means I'm communicating effectively, right?" But that's yeah,
Absolutely.
but at the same time, I mean, they did respect the position more because they knew if they didn't get feedback on candidates, if they didn't show up at the debrief meetings that we scheduled, I was gonna be biting their ankles, okay, or going out to them for feedback. Because, again, you're trying to like you said, it's a sales position. And you're trying to not only work with those hiring managers and those business leaders that you're supporting, but you also are responsible for communicating back to the candidates. And that's been and you're that middle ground to do that. So how are we going to learn to have that effective role again of being that middle ground, an effective middle ground between the candidate experience and also the hiring manager experience, right? Working collaboratively with both ends, right?
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing it's about prioritization, right? It's knowing what to prioritize, which physicians need more attention now, right? And like for us, we look at positions that are over 90 days. In a perfect world, we'd have no positions under 90 days. But our team has done an incredible job of getting rid of roles that have been open for over 90 days. There's probably close to, I don't know, maybe 60 positions that have it, but it was at like 150 before. So they've really take understood under they our team has understood the priorities that we need to focus on those positions while also focusing on the positions that are just opening up. It's a balance, and I think you bring up a good point. It's hard to swivel left and deal with the candidates, and then swivel right, my left, my right, by the way, to say, all right, hiring managers, this is what's going on. And so you've got to be able to bring both sides together. And when you do that, you do have a more well-oiled machine that fosters communication, priorities are understood, and your mission is to go get it and find the right candidates and not rely on the technology. to do all the work for you.
Yeah, I think that right now there's so much buzz around the technology and around AI. But I don't think that our jobs are going away because this is a people-oriented business that we're in. I think that the some of the tools there's so many when we talked about conferences, there's so many tools out there that it's I mean, after a while, it becomes a blur. I don't know in all the years I've been in this business that I have seen so many new vendors in such a short time come to the table trying to help us make our jobs easier, right? Because all of their tools are AI supported. At the end of the day, I mean, some of those tools are gonna work, some of them are gonna go away. And what's gonna happen though, we're still gonna be left with ourselves, and we're still gonna be left being a mediator between the candidates that are interviewing and the hiring teams that are hiring. So how are we going to improve those roles? One thing that I think that's been missing over the years has been the fact, and I did this at a couple companies where we, as the recruiting team, sat in on business meetings. We sat in with marketing. We set up competitive intelligence meetings with the marketing department. The marketing department is a gold mine for the recruiting industry and for the recruiting departments and talent acquisition organizations. It's amazing how much the sales and marketing teams can collaborate with recruiting to help kind like you said, where we become a more well-oiled machine where we're working with all these different departments because they each offer something and we can each share with each other because the recruiting team is on the front line. We're hearing all the information about our competitors from the candidates, right? And then you have your marketing department who is gathering competitive intelligence at the industry level, sharing that information together with the business teams at business meetings really helps us to have a bigger seat at the table. In fact, sometimes it kind of puts us at the head of the table because we can share more competitive intelligence and gain more from the marketing departments when we're sitting there.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. And I mean, for most of my recruiting career, I've been in those meetings. I think it's important to have that seat at the table. That makes me cringe to say that because look, people, look, my CHRO at our company, she has a seat. She's strategic. She's smart. She's funny. She knows how to relate to people, right? And that's important because I can now look to my CHRO as that beacon that if I need something, I've got my boss that I can go to, my VP, but that I can go to her and we can share ideas and talk about what needs to change or how I can be doing better on something, right? And I've had that 2 other times with CHROs, and it makes a difference. And I think that that flows down. So I think a lot of it starts at the top with the vision and leadership from your top HR person, and it's about it's really to me about focusing on taking what you're learning and taking what's in here and transferring that knowledge to others, right? Because we don't know how much longer we're here. Every day's a reward, right?
Every day,
As they say.
every day.
Every day's a reward.
And I give my going back on some of the practices that we have gained in this industry because we've been doing this for a while. Is I think you just hit it the nail on the head. That's what we need to share with people. Because like I said, a lot of new people have come into the industry that didn't have the opportunity before using job boards to really learn some of the nuances of talent acquisition before diving in as recruiters and sourcers using these tools. It kind of put them in a more transactional role. And now they get to move that transactional piece of their job to software that can help with it and put them back into a role of communicating and showing who they are, demonstrating their personal brand in this industry and being able to collaborate with all these different departments and whatnot.
Yeah, and I think so if I had to say another transferable skill as we move into 2026. It's been a big gap as well, is understanding your business. So, answer your question, yes, all of our recruiters and sourcers have been in a dialysis clinic and sat and met and spoken with the clinical managers, the RNs, the PCTs, to really understand what they go through. Ours is more of a service than a product. I mean, yes, we have dialysis machines, things like that. Are they experts in that? No, but they understand what the dialysis machine does. They understand that having the most purified of water is vital to the dialysis process and how we go about ensuring the quality of the water, right? The first experience I got with that was back in the early 90s. Was I got in the car, I worked for the Dallas Central Appraisal District. They're the people, it's the folks that deal with the property taxes and they assess your property. So they have auditors that go out, will visually inspect your property, see if there are additions, things like that, because they'll look at different construction reads. And so I went out in all three business lines, understanding the business. At 7-Eleven, you work all three shifts. I just read an article about a CHRO for Whataburger, who I believe I think she's fairly new to the business, but basically she had to work all shifts and she had to work all stations in a Whataburger restaurant. If you're not doing the day to day, I mean, obviously, we're not trained to do dialysis or canalize a patient or do whatever we need to do to set them up. That's not us. But if we understand the process, we can explain the position. We do have day in the life videos that we share. And what's interesting, our marketing department is now part of she reports, the head of marketing reports to the CHRO. So now they're going to learn more about employment brand. We're going to expand their knowledge, and we may not have to go 100% to use an agency for everything, right? Because they are the voice of who we are. And you got to rely on that. That's super important.
Another question I have, speaking of using outside resources, what about, and you mentioned this too, that you have worked for US Renal Care for a long time before converting to a full time role. How do you see the industry as we move forward utilizing more contract and outside resources from that perspective? Maybe not the agency side so much, but more contract resources versus hiring people full time? Because I know there's been a lot of layoffs, and I think people are afraid to really hire internally for talent acquisition because they don't want to have to lay off. Do you see an increase for utilizing the gig economy more, if you want to call it that, to augment staffing? Or I should
It's interesting you ask. It's interesting. I was just having this conversation with Jim Dermott and Matt Charney last week regarding that. And right now, it's hard to tell. We don't have a defined answer of, hey, yeah, contract recruiters gonna be able to go in and get it. Now, when we bring somebody on, we start them off as a contractor, but eventually move them to a full-time employee. I I think people will need contract recruiters, but if you have AI helping in some aspects, you might not need those contract recruiters if you're reducing the amount of time, the admin time, because you're using AI. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I couldn't get a good read on my from my crystal ball. But seriously, I don't know the answer to that question. The Look, the gig economy was great. I was a part of that gig economy and from 2018 through 2022, August of 22 when I joined here, right? And basically, I have found that there's not much of that need. People are struggling. People are struggling.
I think that once we do start seeing more hiring though going on, once the economy lifts, it it sounds to me from what I've heard, I have one client who says they've got 15,000, it's a big company. They have 15,000 contingent workers. I I said, 15,000? They said, "Well, it's globally." I said, "Still, that's a huge number of contingent workers." Now, it's not obviously just talent acquisition, but they do have some talent acquisition contractors. And they do have their core team, but they like to bring in contractors because if they see it's going to be a temporary hiring ramp or that they're going to have a need for that extra support for 6 months or 12 months or whatever it is, they'll bring the contractors in first. And like you said, convert them if it looks like it's going to continue on. But it's not just for TA. I mean, the gig economy, it sounds to me, will continue to thrive and even expand because people are afraid to hire full time initially because of all the layoffs that have happened. So it sounds to me like for now that the contingent workforce side of the business is going to thrive.
I mean, I definitely agree with you there. It's While I'm now a full-time employee, it's hard to gauge for me if the gig economy is thriving. I don't know if it's thriving in recruiting right now.
No, but in other areas, supply chain.
In other areas, supply chain, marketing, branding, yes. In recruiting right now, contract recruiting is quiet and contract sourcing is all but dead.
What do we need moving forward for TA to be successful?
So I think one of the jobs that is missing from the smaller organizations is having TA operations, right? And someone that can help you get projects across the finish line because we're being asked to do so much more with less. So if I had to pick one need that every organization should look at, it's what I'm doing today as a TA operator. And I think that's missing. And it's something that I have been offering for services for the last, 6, 7 years. And it works. It does. It helps people it's an investment in trying to get things organized, situated, whatever the word you want to find, but also someone that can help you get your projects across the finish line. If you're interested and you just want to talk about how I've been able to build up the TA operations here, uh, feel free to reach out to me, DM me, and we can have a conversation about
Awesome. I know other people who have transitioned to TA operations over the last 2 years, and so it's interesting that you bring this up again. And TA operations, of course, it's a expansive role, and it can be as small of a role, like you said, for a smaller organization, or it can expand into a larger role for bigger enterprise companies. So, Michael, tell me, looking back, what do you wish you had learned earlier as a TA leader that you know now?
patience.
Oh, love that. I can say that as a
Patience.
parent too.
Mhm.
Yeah, we won't go into parenting. Yeah.
I was the first child. I understand that. So, yeah, patience, right? In my early career, it was all about, all right, let's get it done. Let's get it done. Let's get it done. And things would get done, but without understanding your stakeholders, your clients, whatever you want to call them, your hiring managers, the business, whatever it is, right? You can't just say, oh, I've set it up this way at this company, this company, this company, this company. So this is the way we should do it here. It's not a one size fits all
Yeah, true.
deal. Talent acquisition is not, HR is not, it's so different.
It is so different.
But the things that it is, but the things that we have the same, we still have the same issues across most organizations, right? High demand, low supply of available candidates, hiring managers that have a tough time making good talent decisions, recruiters helping them and being advisors versus paper pushers, right? Today, we all have the same common problems. We all talk about the same thing. But unless you're willing to stick your neck out on the line and make change in your organization, you're still going to have the same issues as everybody else. Be different, be better, right?
So let's talk about some of the TA conferences that are going on right now, or that I should say that have been going on. I've noticed an increase in them since COVID. I think that we've learned a lot from people attending workshops at the conferences about some of the things we're discussing now. I think it's helped to expand our awareness of what's important to other organizations, other companies, other TA practitioners. But have we hit a wall with the conferences, do you think?
Yes, we have. So you may or may not have seen, I wrote an article yesterday about that very topic. I did a follow up video this morning about that very topic. Look, if a conference is now a big sales pitch, and look, I understand why conferences have moved to that model. And one of a bigger conference planner that I was talking to yesterday say, look, everybody wants to go for free, right? So we got to make it up on the back end somehow. And so we give these vendors speaking spots. I said, but yeah, you do it right. You don't put the vendors to be your presenters during breaks or during like the old recruiting or vendor halls where they're now just sitting outside the doors. There's not a room dedicated with 100 vendors in it, right? I mean, if you ever been to a SHRM conference, oh my God, you could walk for hours, right? So those are the opportunities to feature and showcase your vendors. You put them in you put them in a room under a tent, wherever, right? And you hear a sales pitch. We're not sharing practices anymore. We're just selling stuff that we may or may not need. And that isn't learning to me. LinkedIn's the same way. LinkedIn's a big vendor push now. The sense of community is lost.
Oh, that's too bad because they used to I remember going to a LinkedIn conference in 2015, I think it was. It was in San Francisco, and it was a great conference. I mean, there was a lot of vendor pushing there too, but
Oh, sure.
the other
Their user conference. It's
right,
their user conference.
but they had great workshops. I loved their workshops, and that's what I go to
Yeah,
conferences for.
yeah, and companies, but have the companies up there presenting maybe about how they used a particular product and how it helped them. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear how this has all the highest technology and the best AI capability, can give us the best information, and it can do this, that, and the other. That's why the vendor area exists, is to go hear that over there, not sit and poise it as a fireside chat and it's as a best practice and it's just a big vendor demo. That's not what TA needs. That's not what HR. It's not what anybody wants. And so before we hit record on this, you and I were talking that the best kind of conferences, if you want to learn something and you want to share that knowledge with people, go to conferences that are in your space to learn more about, as you said, the products, the services, the advantages, and a lot of them will have a human capital section to their learning track.
Yeah, the last one I went to had a
And
workforce development pavilion, and they had
yeah, what was
people
that? Semicon?
yeah,
What was it?
Semicon West. It was here
Yeah.
in Phoenix, and I opted for that one versus a talent acquisition conference this year because, I mean, just where I'm at professionally, it's something that I needed to attend. I've been to a number of talent acquisition conferences, and they've been helpful. I've learned a lot. But sometimes I think they can be a bit repetitive if I go to too many of them. I see the same people at the same conferences. So just to kind of shake things up a bit, I think it's good to go to the industry conferences for the industries that you either want to support or are supporting. Because they're all encompassing. It was amazing to go to this conference. It was huge. talk about vendor rooms. They had 2 floors of vendors, and I've never seen so many robotics in my entire life. It was just amazing.
You bring up a good point. Like, you and I have been doing this for a bit, right? And I'm always open to learning something new. And I do. I try to learn something new when I go to a particular conference. I'm mostly there for the networking, to see people I haven't seen in a year or so.
Yeah, the water cooler.
The water
The
cooler.
water cooler effect.
And
Yeah.
it's as I believe Jim D'Amico called it, the water cooler of mundaneness or something like. He used a pretty fancy word but he hit the nail on the head. It's just the same, pardon my French, same shit, different day in our conference, right? And so what we need to do is there need to be conferences that not only focus on recruiting for recruiters, but also for recruiting leadership. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity there as well, which I've got something going on in my head.
Oh, well,
So,
hey,
and on paper, but I can't
keep
talk
me
about
posted. Keep me
it. I
posted.
will.
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah, because it is when I went to the Semicon West, they had an entire area. It was a huge area devoted to workforce development, and they had different people coming in who some of them were vendors, uh, I should say TA leaders for the vendors that were there. But it was actually a very well organized section of that particular conference because it did give the people, the vendors, and also just attendees an opportunity to listen to the different discussions around workforce development for the electronics industry. And if you think about it, electronics is the backbone of everything we do. So it was just mind-boggling to see how many different companies and how many different types of companies were there for electronics. And oh yeah, it was amazing.
See, that's what people want to know. People want to know about the tools that are out there. What are the tools to look at? What are the ATSs to look at? What are the ones to stay away from? Right? ATS, vendor, anything, right? So, and that is the way it should be done. I'd almost rather attend those types of conferences where I go in not knowing a soul. Those are the best kind because then you're forced to extend your hand and say, "Hi, I'm Michael," or "Hi, I'm Denise. This is what I do."
Well, plus it honestly, one of my clients had attended this conference and he took me around and introduced me to other people who were yeah, it was amazing. And I got to meet some people I've been trying to get a hold of for a while that were there. It was a very well organized conference. But I think that the areas that they did discuss with respect to workforce development was more around not so much tools for talent acquisition. It was more around hiring for the industry and what we have to look forward to, and so there were different discussions around that, depending on who the presenter was.
And those are the conversations we also need to
We
be
do.
having is what are we doing to make it better?
Yeah,
Let's not deal with mediocrity. Let's take it to the next
right.
level. Easier said than done. I understand.
Yeah, but this is the starting place. This is where we start with conversations
Exactly.
like this.
Exactly.
Yeah. How do you define success for talent acquisition in 2026?
Service, and giving the people what they want. Give your hiring managers what you want. Don't make excuses. Be curious, be creative, be connected. That's my mantra. And to me, the more curious that you are, the more you're going to learn. The more you ask questions, the more you connect with people, the more you try ideas. Fail or succeed, it doesn't matter. It's let's try it. And don't go all out. Start small. Do little trials in different areas of TA. Try something out. If it works, make it a little bit bigger. Make it a little bit bigger soon after, right? And grow it. Then you got a story.
Well, not only that, but I think that people, talking about transferable skills, I think that people who are interested in other areas of the business need to do that, try that as well. And you had mentioned clinical research specialists earlier, and you have to be qualified for those. But somebody who's been recruiting clinical research specialists for a while and maybe understand some of those, there could be an opportunity for them to do some sort of a
Never know.
rotational. Yeah, I mean, if it's something that interests them, because it is a very interesting field. Clinical research is very interesting. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
All right. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Connect with me out on LinkedIn. I'm Dallas Michael Goldberg, if you want to find me, and connect with me. Let's talk. I'm always open for a good conversation around talent acquisition, talent operations, anything you want to talk about.
And then you have your newsletter too. What's the name of your newsletter?
The talent transformer.
The Talent Transfer. I love your newsletter. I follow you,
Thank you.
follow your newsletter. So
Yeah, no, definitely. I try to publish every Tuesday, once a week. I can't do it like some of my friends that do it 2, 3 times a week.
yeah,
I'm an okay writer, but,
but you have a
I'd
day
like to
job.
save my chocolates.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got my day job too. That's right.
Michael, thank you so much for joining me. This has been such a great conversation. I really enjoyed having you on.
No, thanks for having me, Denise. I loved it and, look forward to doing this again
You
sometime in the
bet.
future.
You bet. We'll stay connected on your plans.
Yes.